You are seen as one of Guyana's young leaders. The fact is, we continue to say that youths are our future leaders, but we're seeing that Guyana is not necessarily achieving that goal. What is needed in Guyana currently for youth to really and truly become tomorrow's leaders?
Look, I see people like me with titles and status. We're authority figures, so we always got to separate what authority figures are and what leaders are. Anybody can be a leader. Any young person deciding tomorrow that they want to lead in anything, if they want to be the leader of their football team, they want to be a leader in their community, they want to lead in their sports, anything that they're involved in, their NGO group or whatever it might be. Leadership is possible by the people who are willing to put in the work to achieve the goals that they want to. And anybody can exercise leadership. If the issue within a community is littering, for instance, and there's a problem in a community, a young person can show leadership by saying, look, I'll start by my carpet in front of my house. I'll get up every morning and I'll clean that. And then from cleaning that, he goes to the neighbor and he tells the neighbor, look, you can keep your carpet clean also. And then he can organize and rally folks from within his community to do the same. It's easy that anybody can, once you're willing to take the chance to go out and put in work to achieve an objective, we can all be leaders. So we're all leaders. We just need to recognize that we are, and we also need to separate the distinction from authority figures and leadership. Because there's leaders in history who didn't have authority titles. The Chamber of Commerce president or whoever you might head of Blue Caps or whatever it is. Even if you take away those titles, I can still demonstrate leadership by showing for some cause or for some issue that I believe strongly in, advocating on behalf of it, or taking some concrete step that might contribute to the reduction of whatever that problem or issue is.
But do you believe that, if you want to call it, in modern Guyana, if you want to call it that the conditions are right for, or I should say the conditions are appropriate for a young person to easily become a leader or propel in whatever it is that they're involved in?
I'll tell you what's going on, Malika. Firstly, there's the issue of, in terms of authority figures and young people taking the reins of those positions. The older generation, to an extent, don't trust the younger generations to manage and to hold those titles. They believe experience is more important than competence. Because you can be young and you might not have the requisite experience as somebody older, but you can have the competence to execute or to run a position. That's one issue where the young people, the older generation don't trust the young people. The other issue is this issue which I call the weapons of mass distraction. And the weapons of mass distraction, they're all around us. Now you got social media complicating the entire situation. The young people spend more time on Facebook. Young people, yesterday I had Brigadier David Granger here. You know, we got about 40 people attending. A couple of weeks before we had Moses and we had about 30 people attending. And I was saying, you know, here's an opportunity where you had a direct chance to meet our policymakers or political leaders, and people don't turn out in the numbers that I would expect to come to meet policymakers whose decisions affect their lives. But if I had said I'm going to bring let's say Chris Brown, I don't know some of the reggae artists,
Yes.
bring a popular reggae artist here, you would have seen this room. I'd have had to put restrictions and limitations because they're distracted by things like, you know, I love the Miss Universe pageant and all these pageantries that you see, but those things are all part of the distraction where young people focus a lot on superficial stuff than on substantial stuff.
But can we fix that?
And it's a tough conundrum in the sense that we first need to address the issue and start addressing the issue through education. We need to start educating young people on the importance of them having a voice, that their voice matters in the national conversation. That's one of the reasons why we started Blue Caps.
Okay.
We saw a vacuum in terms of leadership around the country. Look, the lack of local government elections in communities contributed to that problem. But we saw that lack of leadership. I remember speaking to then U.S. Ambassador Brent Hart when before Blue Caps wasn't even an idea. And I remember telling Brent, you know, the U.S. Embassy has this national youth. They got the youth ambassadors. He had another program, and you know, and he would invite me to come and talk to these young people. And I said, but everything is happening every day. We're out there hearing from the politicians, who by the way take up a lot of the space, the conversation space in Guyana, political policymakers. And then you had after them, you had the private sector commission, you had me, the Chamber of Commerce. commenting on every issue you can think about, money laundering, public procurement commission, Maria. And then I'm asking them, where are all these young people in these youth groups? What are their positions on these issues? These issues affect them directly. Everything, even at the Chamber of Commerce level. You look at that National Youth Policy document, the draft of it, they said they did extensive consultations with young people, the largest in the history, they said. And the number one issue I identified was employment. That has a direct bearing on the private sector here, because they're the primary ones, besides the government, who create employment. So even pronouncements of the private sector affects young people. Every issue affects young people, and that's why I think young people, we also make up the majority. And when I say young, I use the young 40 and under. I'm 35 now, I'm part of the older young. But we make up the substantial base of the voting population. And we have enormous powers, but we don't recognize it. And we need to start recognizing it and stop being indifferent to the process and get involved in terms of turning around and using our voice and our power to our advantage to get not just the policymakers, but also to get your private sector to listen, get the international donors to listen to what your views and opinions are. It's a complete lack of it in Guyana. Even now with Blue Caps, we have Blue Caps, and we wanted to create a platform where young people's voices can be heard. And I'm happy to say that within a couple of months, we had that platform. We said things, the media would pick up on it, the leaders would pick up on it, which is great for Blue Caps or what. But we want the other groups to do something and say something. We find it problematic to pull other young organizations, other young youth-focused organizations to align with us or collaborate with us because they're fearful of engaging in politics. A lot of it also has to do with this environment where there's polarization along the line of
You can't
fears.
say that you're affiliated with a party.
Young people are scared. Yeah, yesterday I asked a young person, who you voting for in this year? And the person tell me, Mr. Erling, that's private. And I'm saying, are you kidding? Why is it private to say you belong to a party or you're voting for some group? That you should be able to confidently say that.
Who is responsible for that fear that has manifested in our young people, whereby if you're not like me, working with a political party, you can't go there and say I'm APNU or I'm AFC or I'm PPP. Who or what is responsible for that fear?
I'll tell you the fear comes from all the political groups, more so the government, because the government controls the executive apparatus. And what I found, even during our journey with Blue Caps, that we comment on issues that the government don't support. If I talk about some issue that the government supports, but I'm against it, and we always try to be as objective as we could, the government will retaliate in some way. They'll find subtle ways or direct ways to get to you. What young people need to do, we need to be more, and again, this is where education comes in. I heard Granger talking about education being important for him. We need to be more analytical in things that we do. Like sometimes I see statements, I see people make statements, I'm on Facebook, I see people say something, and then I think, if they really think about it, think about some of the assumptions the writer was making, and they think about it, thought about it more critically, they'll realize how empty and vacuous the argument that the person was trying to put forward. I'll tell young people, you don't have to take a side. The only side you should take is the side of rationality and objectivity. If you see something that's right or wrong, you say it. If you see something that hurts the national interest, you speak out against it. If it supports the national interest, you articulate your position in favor of. And that's your only obligation. And it doesn't matter which group you belong in. In fact, I encourage all young people to become more politically engaged, if it means joining a political party, or any one of them. Just get out there, be engaged, and do it in a manner where there's certain ethics to it. It's not done in a way in which you cursing people out through an environment of fear, or somebody don't agree with your point of view. You can't tolerate that. That's another problem we have generally from the older level, and it's now coming down to this current generation where if Malika doesn't agree with me on a position, somehow Malika is my enemy. I personally encourage diverse opinions. If somebody can argue something logically to me and my position don't make sense, I'll accept it. We need strategies to retain our best and brightest. We're losing our best and brightest. All my high school friends, they're not here anymore. All of them are overseas. When the top students leave University of Guyana, they're not here, they're overseas.
All of those things that you're saying, right now we're in a political season, a political environment. Elections are slated for the 11th of May. do you believe that a government coming, clearly, I mean, and this is not necessarily a biased opinion, this is fact. The government of the day has not been able to achieve those goals. Some of the concerns that you've raised in terms of young people, keeping young people here, providing jobs, providing proper homes, and this sort of thing. Do you believe that new government coming into play, if that should happen, would be able to institute these changes that you're talking about, given our current state? Or is it too much baggage? Will a new government or a new party be taking over too much baggage? How easy would it be to achieve your goals?
No, I'm saying, look, I won't make any assumptions as to what a new government or the current government can or can't do. All it takes is to realize what the problems are and then to start addressing them. I've always advocated for a sort of an economic council to make decisions in terms of economic decisions, because a country has to make money before it can spend on social programs and so on. In terms of changing the current status quo, it requires a lot of political will. It requires an inclusive approach to governance, whichever side wins. Currently, we don't have the inclusive approach, because that's why we're here with a prorogation and an elections, and premature elections before the mandated 5 years. If we had mature politics at play, the budget crisis, all these different crises we had to cross, we wouldn't have had them. The government missed many opportunities to engage with the opposition on a number of issues. You're the head, you're the leader. You could have ensured that you had a broad-based type inclusive approach to every issue. Even when it came to the prorogation of the parliament, they could have sat down and ensured that they had an approach where all the groups were involved to solve that situation. You look at crime and security. You know, I remember reading out David Granger's resume yesterday and seeing his accomplishments in the area of security. And I'm thinking, if you're a president, here's a perfect opportunity to work with somebody like Mr. Granger to help devise our anti-crime strategy and to bring these things down. And that's what I'm saying. Once we have mature leaders who understand that all the answers would not just come from my party exclusively, it can come from the other political groups, it can come from the diaspora, it can come from our university. We don't have all the answers. Accepting your own limitation and your own ignorance is the first step to good leadership. And I think in Guyana we've not had that leadership. And that's why we're in this situation.
What role would Clinton Erling and probably some of members of his own LUCAP organization willing to play in any government coming after May 11, 2015? What role would you want to play to see the improvement of young people in our nation?
The number one role is not for me. I think for those who are coming in, LUCAP's focuses on leadership development. We focus on policy and advocacy, and we focus on community service. Take those three things and implement a program at the national level, incorporating those three things. National, the whole idea of committing to the national good through national service, or what you might want to call it, is also an important part of that. We even need to look at the Guyana Defense Force. That Defense Force should have had, instead of you giving a contract to one man for $1 billion or $2 billion to build a road I see the Mila Road costs a lot of money, or a few contractors. The GDF should have had the engineering corps, should have been one of the top institutions. So when young people leave in the university, they know once you join the GDF Corps of Engineers, which is a top-notch program and so forth, those are the people you send to build the roads. $1 billion to GDF to strengthen their core, and then they gotta go and work. It's for free. You're paying them a salary anyway, so you send in your same core. Brazil does it all over the world. In fact, the US leads in it. The United States military complex is what they use to attract a lot of young people. In fact, the young ones who go to war for them, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But they use the military as a vehicle to spur development, build infrastructure projects. When Katrina happened, it's the military going in there first. And we can replicate. Instead of giving surrender, you find companies running off with billions of dollars that we spend. Again, specialty hospitals and all these things you say you're pursuing. We could have had the Defense Force leading those projects. That $1 billion could have gone into the Army developing that. and then they would have had to use that now to develop the core. We would have saved a lot of monies that could have been diverted elsewhere to more development projects and so forth. If the result is the current situation, we got a minority government, we need to start talking power share and inclusivity. Even if there's one party who win all the thing outright, even worse if you ask me, that scenario, we need to start talking about inclusivity. So I'm saying, run all you want out from talks, and then you see all these extreme voices on the forums of distraction for young people, talking about Clinton sitting on the fence and don't talk about engagements, and so let me go to elections. Elections aren't going to solve it. We can run all we want, because even after the elections, the losing group, you still gotta listen to, you still gotta incorporate them somehow into your design. There's some good people there. Right now, there's some who shouldn't really be there in terms of competency, but there's one or two you can find, and both sides are guilty of that. But the government has been there for 20 years, so the blunt of the blame should rest squarely. Most of it should rest on the government.